Oh, wait. No, I got to stop it.
What happened? Full story.
I can't do it now. Never mind. Whatever. Well, it's because we're live. So
yeah.
I forgot to do the individual recording.
Oh, you forgot to do that. Okay. Well, welcome back to Grimerica Outlawed. We have André Meloche with us. He is here to debunk the untruths that abound in our time. He's a writer, philosopher, and now a podcaster as well from Quebec, where I was born, where I moved out of in the 70s. So welcome to the show, André. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Graham, and Darren.
Yeah, this will be fun. I mean, I hope you don't mind us asking you a bunch of questions about,
Of course. Sometimes, with the podcast I have with Tim and Payment, we're used to answer questions, even tough questions.
Yeah. So that podcast is Cerberus at the Gates, right? With Payment and Tim. So, I mean, maybe just before we get into that even, but I will say to everybody that your links are in the show notes, substack.com at LePoeTerrusse, and then andremeloche.wordpress.com, and your x.com is Le Poet Russe. So just the links are there in the show notes for people. So let's just get in. I don't really even know you that well. I've been on a couple shows with you, talked to you, but let's get into a little bit about André, a little bit about your past, your writing. Have you always been dissident, sort of pushing back, or is this a new thing for you?
Well, my mother was always telling me that I was always too curious. So I think it's a long story. Well, like you, I was born in Quebec, and I stayed all my life in Quebec. I worked. I studied I have a bachelor's degree in literature, French literature, and I studied philosophy. But I also have a technical degree in electronics. So, and I worked for 33 years at Hydro-Quebec. First of all, I was a network operator. Then I became an electrician in a high voltage power plant and high voltage substation. So I'm quite familiar with the technical side of a transmission grid. And I became a manager. Then I became a business trader. I was trading energy on the stock market for Hydro-Quebec. We had a trading floor. And in the last, I would say, 15 years of my career, I was a business analyst and the senior advisor for the high management of Hydro-Quebec. So business analyst, meaning understanding all the organization of a major company, which is Hydro-Quebec, 22,000 employees, 4 divisions. Wow. You had a production division, transport, distribution, and building division, James Bay. So I was teaching a lot, but also I was organizing structure with the high management. And I retired in 2014, but side by side, I started to do a literature degree when I was 35, and I started to write. So I write since 32 years, and essentially I wrote 4 novels, 6 plays, one Greek Roman tragedy. I have about 100 short stories, many articles, and I wrote 4 major essays. One on knowledge. When I retired from Hydro-Quebec, I started to write an essay on knowledge. What is knowledge in big companies? And then I wrote an essay, a comparative study between 2 writers, Albert Camus, who was a Nobel Prize of Literature in 1959, I think, a little bit before he died. And I compared him with another philosopher, José Ortega y Gasset, The Revolt of the Mass. And I wanted to show the difference between what is an insurrection, how it starts, what are the motivation of insurrection, and what how people are driven by an insurrection. The mob, the psychology of masses, notably with Sigmund Freud. So I've studied a lot the work of Freud. So I'm fond of philosophy and psychology. That's about what I do. And since 12 years since I retired with my wife, we have a big garden. We do a lot of canning and reconstructing a 200-year-old Scottish house. So I'm skilled.
How
Sorry,
long
Darren.
is the paper on insurrection?
What? Sorry, I didn't hear.
How long was your paper on insurrection?
Well, it's a comparative study between two writers. I wrote this in 2018 in French. Most of my work is in French, but now I'm starting to write article, and I always translate them in English because practically nobody reads me in Quebec, and I have more, more readers outside of Quebec. So, but I essentially write in French because it's my language, and then I try to use software to translate, and I correct the text. So it's a long text.
Is it harder to write in English?
Well, it's not my language. I write a lot in English, but I would say, for example, if I write a text, I will write it in French because my vocabulary is very rich. Then when I translate it in English and I correct it, I make sure that I respect the idea or the spirit of the text. Then I could say, since 1.5 years with my collaboration with Payment and Tim, my English has improved a lot. It was quite good, but because I read in English, but with them, it was interesting because many expressions they're using, I'm not familiar with them. So my vocabulary has increased a lot in the last 1.5 years, especially on the political side, because we have a podcast with based on politics, philosophy, history, and what is happening essentially in Canada. So
yeah, it's
quite interesting.
A mini digital immersion. It's like because they say the best way to learn a language is to go there. You got to go there. You got to be fully immersed in it. If you're fully immersed in it for a month, you'll learn more than you will in a classroom in a couple of years. So doing that podcast is kind of like just, you're not in it full time, but you're at least jumping in the pool for a couple hours a week.
Exactly. And the most difficult part is to improvise, because to improvise on many subjects or many topics. If I start to write a text in French on one topic, I control the narrative. And when the reader reads, you cannot challenge me. But if it's live, like today, I think you have to be more modest. So I don't know. Or sometimes I struggle with Tim and Payment. And sometimes I go watch the episode after and I tell myself, shit, this is what he meant when he was saying this. I didn't know the expression. So it's a work in progress. So it's interesting.
We should do a Spanish podcast, Graham. We'll get some
Spanish. You speak Spanish?
No, I don't. But it seems like if I was going to learn a language, it seems like probably one of the more valuable ones to learn. If it was, I don't know, maybe that or like Arabic or something. But it seems like for where we are, there's some value to French, but it's really just in Quebec, whereas Spanish can come in handy all over the place. And we were just in the Azores, which is Portuguese. But the people who could speak Spanish were really able to communicate. It wasn't perfect, but they were able to communicate, whereas I didn't know what the fuck was going on. And they were saying, well, it's sort of the same thing. And it's like Portugal, Spain, Italy a little bit. There's sort of all these countries that we can, we couldn't have a super complex conversation, but we can get through the basics of like food, lodging, and sort of the necessities. You can get through the necessities easily between hand language and like just sort of similar words and things like that.
Well, I speak fluent Italian, and French, Italian, Spanish, they are Latin language. So when you switch from French to Italian, the structure of the verb are the same. The grammar is the same. And I remember it was in 1996. I was in Venice, and I met two American gentlemen. One was in the military, U.S. Army, and we were, we both speak English. But because we were in Italy, we started to speak Italian all night, and of course with a little bit of alcohol, it helps. It helps a lot. So at the end of the night, we started to laugh because I was good in Italian, but not that good, and he was good in Italian, but not that good. So we were struggling, and at one point we said, "Why we don't jump in English? It's more easy." So it's interesting. Languages are extraordinary. When you speak more than one language, your brain starts to shift. You think in another language. Now I wake up at night and I think in English, because practically all my conversation, my wife is Russian, but she speaks good French, but essentially we speak English at home, and with many Russian words or French words. So your brain starts to shift. I speak to my cat in English.
Does it change anything if does that change your thought process at all? Going from, because I don't know if I've talked to someone that has actually changed the language that they're thinking in their head, and I'm wondering if that going from one language to the other changes the way your brain works in any sort of way.
Yes, it does, and the vocabulary also helps. That's why I was referring to the collaboration I have with Tim and Payment. They use so many complex words. Or I read a book. Now I'm reading Michael Jones. It's a 600 pages book on philosophy. I struggle with the words because so many words that I don't know. I know them in French, but I don't know them in English. So as soon as I read the phrase, I have to reconstruct. So yes, the brain adapts to the language, and it helps because you see a different reality. I'm connected now with many people in Nova Scotia, with David Garner, with you both, with Payment and Tim in Alberta. I've met a lot of people in Saskatchewan, Ontario, Newfoundland. And you see, when you speak the language, for English, I'm starting to understand more what is happening outside of Quebec. I didn't know what was happening. Most Quebecers, they don't know what is happening outside of Quebec because they don't speak the language, and they are told by, for example, mainstream media that this is the type of reality that is outside of Quebec, and they believe them. Fortunately, I speak English since I'm 12 years old. So by watching American TV for about 18 years and by practicing and reading. The best way to do it is to read English books. It helps a lot.
Well, I'm sort of interested in what's going on in Quebec because it's sort of this interesting dynamic where there's sort of the other separatists. It seems like I'm wondering if, because that's what we're hearing out west, at least, is that Quebec is amping up again. And of course, there's a comparison going on between the last time you guys had your vote on separation and everyone was sort of begging you to stay and that sort of stuff compared to the treatment that we're getting this time. And it's going to be interesting to see if these two movements line up at the same time. If they're like, will they be able to do the like opposite treatment at the same time?
I don't think so. I think the political context has changed. In 1995, the government at the time was the Parti Québécois that was in power. And let's not forget the Prime Minister of Quebec at the time was Lucien Bouchard, and he was an ex-conservative, federal conservative. And the referendum was the second one. 1980 was the first one. The second one was 1995. And when it was lost, it was 50.5 and 49.5. People were deceived. And I think Quebecers at the time after that, they went to sleep. A lot of people went to sleep. They forget about what it is, the idea of independence or sovereignty. And we have to define what is sovereignty. Now I'm starting to understand what is very important. The cultural sovereignty, which is, for example, you want to keep your culture, your tradition, your language, and the economic sovereignty, which is money, natural resource development, wealth system. And in Quebec, unfortunately, we're not sovereign because, first of all, we don't develop any natural resources, and we rely on the equalization to structure the energy, the policies of Quebec.
So, even though you have lots, it's worth throwing that caveat in there. It's not like you guys don't have any natural resources.
They have it. They just decided to align, like I always say, they aligned with the social democracy, which they call social democracy, and with the United Nations 2030 agenda, which is, for example, the carbon tax, electric vehicle. We know today that it is not working, but this is why I think the movement in Alberta is different, and the context, the historic context, is different too.
So
well, wait, before we go away from that, where is it at? Is it true? Is the separatist sentiment coming back up? Is it, because I'm seeing a lot of Alberta stuff, but if Quebec is doing that right now, they seem to be doing it a little more quietly, which might just be because they're a little further away. Like Albertans can taste it right now. So I would argue now is the time to put the pedal to the metal. You've got sort of 8 months to get your case out. You gotta present your case over the next 8 months because the vote is coming. So it's sort of the time to make noise. And I wonder if in Quebec, if it's happening, if it's just sort of quiet for now until the party gains power, and where you see that sort of going.
Well, if I like I said, the historic context is different. And we suffered something quite hard in Quebec in 2020 with the curfew and the COVID mandate. And a lot of people who were, I would say, sovereignists or nationalists, they just disconnect themselves completely. They said, we will never vote, or we will never vote in power the actual government, but also all the collaborators. Like the Parti Québécois, nobody stood up against people who didn't want to follow the COVID mandate. And it broke the society in two parts in Quebec. You still have a hardcore nationalist movement, but a lot of people just disengaged. And me, I voted yes in 1980. I was 20 years old. You're naive, freedom, blah, blah, blah. And 1995, I think I was a political ignorant. So I voted yes again, because you say, okay, we will separate, the big bad English on one side and the French on one side. And in 2022, I started to ask myself, who am I? Am I Quebecers or am I Canadian? And my answer was quite simple. I'm French Canadian, because you have two founding people and you have the native people in Canada. So we have to go back to the roots of Canada. So I started to find myself more as a French Canadian. But you still have 40% of people, because they don't speak another language, because they are trapped in this narrative. Oh, if we're independent, we will be free. Are you free economically? Do you protect your language? Can you express yourself? Protecting your language is one thing, but being stuck in a ghetto of a language is another thing. So I think that many people were deceived, disappointed by the movement. They will not go back, and I think it is changing, because we don't know what will happen. The 51st state, the way Trump is acting now, geopolitically speaking, those are unknown territories, and I don't think that people are ready to experience what is coming.
Do you think the Quebecers don't realize that economically it would be hard for them right now because of the transfer payments, or is that just also, are they in the bubble with that too?
I think you have 20 to 25%. That's my own personal opinion. But I think you have 20 or 25% of the population in Quebec who thinks that social democracy works, that we are rich, that we send a lot of money to Ottawa, and we would be more independent if we would separate. No, there's no proof of that. Like Darren mentioned, we do not develop our economy, natural resources. I work for Hydro-Quebec. I know exactly what I'm talking about when we talk about energy, gas and oil. And we don't develop this for many ideological reasons. But I think that you have 25% of people who say, oh, we would be a sovereign. But I would say, which money you will use? Canadian dollar, US dollar? You have an army? When you want to defend your sovereignty, you need to defend the land. And maybe we will talk about what is important. The land is resources. So I don't think that Quebecers, I think they're not ready. And I think that most of them think that, oh, by leaving Canada, we will be more free. Not with the actual government, and especially not in the context that we see now, 51st state. I don't know how it will happen. The next 8 months, like Darren mentioned, the next 8 months, especially in Alberta, because Alberta is much more advanced now in terms of movement. They have the momentum. Here, the actual government is still the government who imposed the curfew and the mandate. This is important to mention.
Well, I mean, and it's also worth mentioning that you have like the lowest fertility rate in the country. So there's also this other weird thing where, I mean, I don't have the average ages in front of me, but Alberta's the youngest in the federation, and Quebec is the oldest. And this is a separation that looks like it's just gonna keep getting bigger. And we've already got this thing where, I mean, the CPP thing has doubled in the last 10 years. So the maximum CPP contributions for an Albertan, I don't know where it is in other provinces, but for an Albertan, it's doubled. It's gone from 2,600 to 5,000 in 10 years. So it's like, and you look at that and that number has to keep going up. So it is almost sort of opposite dynamics when you look at it that way, whereas Quebec is in a lot of ways sort of dependent on the federation without having a lot of lead time. You know, they could get their shit together, but they need a decade to do it. Whereas Alberta's young, sick of footing the bill, and has already in place, 90% of our trade is with the States. We could build more pipelines and turn them on tomorrow. And we've got this sort of different dynamic where we're already sending everything to the States. I don't know how that plays out going forward as a dependency on the States if we'd eventually get absolved, but it is sort of this weird opposite dynamic. It's like I was actually working on an article about how it's this relationship between Alberta and the East right now with this separation. It is like the epitomization of the boomers versus the young ones. It's almost that exact thing playing out in the vote. It's like there's no way that Eastern Canada and Quebec can stop voting for what's in place right now without facing like losing everything you've been working for the last 50 years.
What do you mean?
Well, there's no money. I mean, you know what I mean? They need the money. If they stop voting, if they vote for any government that's actually going to end equalization or redo equalization or do any of this stuff, the money train shuts off. And then so how are you paying for all these old people? And this is the other problem that you see with Alberta wanting to separate is that I don't know if it's a completely conscious level, but on a subconscious level, I say boomers, we get in trouble all the time, Andre. It's nothing, derogatory, because there are a bunch of boomers that get it. There is a bunch of them. But if I got to generalize sometimes. And then the generalization that I put forward is that the Alberta versus the East in this thing, and the reason it's so, the reason it's so sort of confrontational this time, I think, is a sign of how broken the country is and why it probably doesn't deserve to stay together anymore. And B, it's sort of the epitomization of the boomers versus the young ones. I mean, it's happening right here in Canada, where Eastern Canada will never stop voting to keep Western Canada sending billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars every year east, and it's just going to get worse. There's no way to fix this problem that I can see. I'd be interested in what your thoughts are on that.
Honestly, what you said, I agree with you completely, because the gap between what is happening, for example, in Alberta and in Quebec, and you referred to the boomer category of people who are my age or older, and they are not aware of what is happening. The demography is
in their defense, everything worked for them. They sort of got the 40 years where they listened to the system and it worked.
It worked for them financially and economically. I do agree with you. On the other hand, you don't have children. You will have to rely on somebody who will take care of you when you will be old. And you're right. You don't have future if you don't have children. And Quebec fell for this psyop since 40 years, thinking that you don't need demography, you don't need to replace your demography with people who are born here, children's, and immigration will work. It doesn't work because immigrants, when they arrive here, they're already adults, most of them. So when they arrive here, they have needs. They need to work. They need house. They need a car, and all the infrastructure are not built for that. In a normal society, you would have a natural growth and a degrowth. People, they get old and they die and they're replaced, and you have a birth replacement. You're right. The birth replacement in Quebec is the lowest in Canada, and we have the highest level of MAID in Canada, if not in the world. So both sides of the gauze are removed, and you're stuck with people who are, first of all, when you grow older, you have less energy. You want to spend more time maybe meditating or maybe transferring your wisdom. I was a coach at Hydro Quebec, and I was helping a network manager to transfer their wisdom to younger generation, because you see, it's not everybody who wants to be a coach. You need to be able to transfer your knowledge, and you have to be a little bit social, meaning having conversation with somebody asks you a question. So we did program, and I was saying you have to understand that you have to transfer your knowledge to the younger generation, but you need children for that. And Darren is right. There's no replacement birth in Quebec. So they will stick to what they have, and unfortunately, they will die with it. It's not pejorative to say that we are all replaced, and that's why maybe there's a big difference between what is happening. Alberta is young, the dynamic. They want to go forward with the future. In Quebec, I see the total opposite, and it's not the actual nationalist party that will change that. They don't even talk about it.
Yeah, interesting. So what about working for Hydro Quebec? Massive, what would that be? A crown corporation then with 22,000 people? I mean, that is pretty massive. So was that something that you saw, like, were they profitable? Would they have been profitable if they were private? Did you see a lot of like waste in there? Did it have to be subsidized? Like, is that a, you must have learned a lot being in that sort of environment, especially now looking at it philosophically and politically. And I mean, I guess for people that aren't maybe our US listeners, the provinces have a lot of their own power is through their own, like BC Hydro is kind of a crown. I think they're crown corporation for BC, but Alberta's privatized. So BC is like more of like dams and hydro, and then Alberta is probably oil and gas, I guess, Darren, mainly.
88% natural gas.
Natural gas, yes.
Yeah. And then Quebec, I guess you are hydro as well.
Which is the cleanest. Hey, for the record, natural gas is the cleanest form of electricity in Canada, I would argue. I think that there's a ton of evidence now that the hydro is destroying ecosystems worse than the natural gas is. And I mean, I just found this. I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on this, actually, Andre, because I was just watching a thing the other day that say that all of these dams have an inherent shelf life just because of the way the sediment works in them. It's like all of these dams, it might be a long time, but settle. Yeah, because the river brings in all this. It has this natural settle cycle. So it's got all this debris that's meant to flow out and eventually end up in the ocean or wherever it goes, But what happens with these dams is they build these lakes and the sediment just sort of builds up in that. And they were actually showing examples of a bunch of these places that have lost like 50% of their water storage capacity because of sediment washing in and building up the bottom.
Your argument is very interesting, because when I say whether we talk about dams or natural gas, oil, there's no such thing as
clean.
A source energy. Well, okay, I will not use the word clean. There's no such thing as a source of energy that has no impact. Everything has an impact, and we can talk about me. I don't follow anymore I don't use the expression fossil fuel. I use the expression abiotic petrol, abiotic oil, or something that is not made from fossil. And this is a debate that I would like to have. I'm not a specialist, but I can tell you something. I've read so many texts that I'm starting to question the narrative. Darren is right. There are some impacts with those huge dams. And there was a big fight in the 70s when they did James Bay and they flooded hundreds of square miles of the James Bay river. And the methyl mercury, because they did not remove all the tree, the methyl mercury was rising in the reservoir. Then the sediment is quite interesting because yes, it has an impact. Those dams usually their life expectancy is about 100 years. And take the reservoir of LG2, for example. It was built in 1979, so it is quite 45 years. But this dam, it is made of moraine. It's like a core. And after that, they built with boulders. And so this dam will probably never break. But the problem of sediment, yes, is there. And there's always an impact. Which impact is the less damageable for the environment? This is up for debate. Hydro-Québec started to develop in 1955 the Manicouagan River, and that was the first big project that was promoted by the then Nationalist Party in Quebec. And then in 1963, Hydro-Québec nationalized 9 private companies. They went to Wall Street. They borrowed $650 million to be able to nationalize all those companies. That helped Quebec develop their knowledge: engineer, technician, network operator, electrician. We had a great core of very skilled people. But since 20 years, the United Nations 2030 agenda kicked in. And I saw the change when I was there. I was still starting to see the change, that they were starting to promote energy efficiency. It never worked. That's before 30 years they were trying to promote this. And now they're trying to push people to go and buy EV cars, to regulate the temperature in their houses. They're banning wood stove, gas. Natural gas is banned in Quebec now. You cannot use natural gas in some cities. They ban natural gas, and oil furnace is banned. Today in Quebec, there's a law, by law, you cannot buy an oil furnace and install it. It's very funny. 3 days ago, it was minus 37. There was a power outage in Montreal. It's not north of Quebec. It's not me. I have a lot of power outage. I'm 30 miles from Montreal. I'm in a small city. The distribution network is not very good because they did not maintain it. There was 25,000 people without electricity in Montreal. Minus 30. And you're not allowed to have a wood stove in your house in Montreal by law. What the fuck? It is what? You want me to freeze? So I arrive at the conclusion that they do it on purpose. There's something that, the agenda is there, the order comes from the top, and they just comply. I don't see any way we can get out of it if we don't talk about it.
The interesting thing about Alberta is when the power goes out, it depends. If you have a furnace, that's not going to work. But if you do have, like a lot of houses have, they don't all have. If it was up to me, I would say that new houses should just have them in there. But like I have a gas fireplace here that runs on natural gas. If the power goes out, that shit keeps going. And when it gets hot, It's got a little built-in fan that'll kick in and blow the heat in. And what most people don't realize is that includes if the grid goes down. So all of Alberta could theoretically lose power, but all these compressor stations are run in-house by natural gas generators. So the whole system, I could be wrong about that. I haven't spoken to anyone at a...
No, you're right.
But I know that because I'm out hunting around them all the time. And this is how I know that wind and solar are destroying way more ecosystem than natural gas and oil ever do, because I hunt in the old oil fields all the time. but I never hunt in the windmill fields or where the solar panels are because there's no fucking animals there ever. But you know where there is a bunch of animals? Where the oil fields were 50 years ago, because the ecosystem has come back completely. Now, I know
to its natural state.
there's some places where there's been accidents and it hasn't, but for 90% of Alberta, where the rigs used to be 50 years later, other than the roads that are there and the pad, you'd never know it was there. And we have this sort of backup system where if you have a gas fireplace or a gas barbecue or something like that, you've got so your barbecue is going to work no matter what. If you have a gas stove, that's going to work no matter what. And if you have a gas fireplace, that's going to work no matter what, unless there's some sort of catastrophic failure in the system somewhere, but it's not reliant on electricity.
You're right. And it is, I have a small anecdote. In 2004, I was still in Montreal, and I bought a condo at the time, and it was a project from Gas Metro, which is today is Energy. It is the gas company in Quebec. You have Hydro-Quebec and you have Gas Metro, and they did this project. It was a new building with 6 condos, and you had a gas dryer, you had two gas fireplace, the beautiful gas stove. And you say, I will never miss electricity in Montreal. It's not a problem. One day I arrive home, I come back from work, and the neighborhood, there's no electricity. I said, shit, I will be able to cook on my gas stove. No, because the piezo does not work without electricity. So I said, why do I have a second source of energy if I cannot use it? So now I live 30 miles from Montreal, up north here, and we miss electricity all the time here, all the time. It is practically a joke. In 2020, I had an induction cooktop, and the induction cooktop, I burned it. It was my mistake. So I said, okay, I will replace it with gas. So I went to the shop to buy a gas cooktop, and the first thing I said, does this thing work without electricity? Because when in 2004 I had a gas stove, beautiful gas stove, Thermidor. I think the gas stove cost $15,000. I said, I cannot use it. I said, if your cooktop doesn't work, I don't buy it. So he said, no, there's no problem. You can take a match, and you just have to be careful. So what you're mentioning is true. All systems, they always have auxiliary power. So, for example, you would have a gas turbine power plant. You will have one turbine that will be dedicated to the auxiliary system to supply energy in electricity, let's say 13 kilovolt, and you will supply all the equipment, protection, the ventilator, because those gas turbines, they are motor of airplane motors. So you need Rolls-Royce, exactly. Rolls-Royce, Pratt and Whitney, and exactly. So they need auxiliary power. You always have one power plant, one turbine that is dedicated to this, or you have one line that will bring you what we call auxiliary power. They're never isolated. Nuclear power plants, same thing. They're always autonomous. They're always independent. They can always rely on something because it's important to cool off the bar of the nuclear reactor. So when you need 2 or 3 sources of energy, because if you rely only on one and this one falls, it is minus 30, you die. That's simple as that. So banning stove or banning oil furnace or trying to force people to use one source of energy is completely illogic. They are not rational, those people.
So is that a provincial thing then? Is that a provincial standard, or is Alberta unique in that way? Because I think...
Well, it's just the most cost-efficient way to do it. When you're putting out all these compressor stations in the middle of nowhere because they're running these underground pipelines that are feeding natural gas everywhere, you don't want to run power to all these places, right?
Exactly.
You've been out when we're hunting, Graham. We're in the middle of fucking nowhere. To run power to this place would be crazy. So it's like you just include in the plans that the natural gas that's coming into here, we're going to siphon off whatever of it to run this generator, and that's what runs the place.
So it's totally separate from the grid. But is that in Alberta? Is that an example of how the privatization might have affected the way they manage that in Alberta? Like, I don't think it's the same way in Saskatchewan.
Yeah, it would be the same, just because it's just the nature of the compressor station. It's just the most efficient. Like, honestly, the stability of it is just sort of a consequence. They weren't thinking about that when they were building the system. It's just the most cost-effective way to do it, because now you don't have to run electricity all over the place. If you're just running a regular generator, you got to be running diesel out there all the time. So it's like, well, the gas is here. We know how to make
the gas is there. You use it. You use it
already. So let's just do that. Which just by consequence builds a system that's extremely resilient against power failures.
Constant.
We need something besides a furnace
You need a fireplace. Yeah, you'd need a fireplace, or if you had like a gassed-in barbecue at work, because technically your furnace will still get gas. The gas supply won't stop, but the furnace components are all electric.
They're all electronic, so you're stuck. That's why I was referring to the stove that I have and the new cooktop. When I bought an old house in Montreal, it was in 2001, and they had an old gas oven. And my girlfriend at the time, she says, "Oh, maybe we replace." I said, "Don't touch it. Don't touch it. It is old. It was 1940. You take a match. Let's go. It works." I said, "It works. We keep it." Because Darren is right. The fact that if you have gas, gas is most probably, like he said, the cleanest form of energy that we have. And in Quebec, we don't want to develop it for ideological reason. It's not even the lack of knowledge or wisdom or vision. They're just plain stupid. They follow the United Nations 2030 agenda, and they don't ask themselves questions.
Well, you must be excited then about Trump's Secretary of Energy, because I mean he's saying the same thing. I mean, he's like all for gas and nuclear and coal, and he's saying the same thing about these renewables aren't working. They've invested; it's been a big boondoggle, right? They've done this investment and they've lowered the energy rates and all this stuff. So they've increased the price and lowered the effectiveness. So doesn't that give you some hope that we're kind of climbing over this hump and that people are going to have to get on board? Or
of course, this is the end of the climate hoax. Take the windmill, for example. In 2003, we started to implement a windmill farm, Hydro-Quebec. We were forced to do it. The price then was 25 cents per kilowatt hour. And the cost production of hydro then was 2 cents. So you can imagine they forced Hydro-Quebec to integrate 4% of the installed capability, with all the problems that you have with windmill. Windmill minus, when it is minus 15, windmill does not work. The utility factor was about 0.28%. And it is not renewable. It's not power. It is energy. When it is minus 25 outside, it doesn't work. You need power. It can provide energy, but not a lot. So we had a lot of problem integrating the windmill in the grid. And some engineer I was working with, they were calculating the amount of windmill that we can integrate, and they said not more than 8% of the production could be windmill. Could be, not should be. That's the maximum. I'm not even talking about solar. We know we live in Canada; it's a Nordic country. Solar doesn't work. It doesn't work. EV cars. I think in Alberta, 2 years ago, there was a cemetery of Tesla on the highway, because it was minus, I think if I remember, minus 28 for 2 weeks. Try to recharge your car when it is minus 20. It doesn't work. It just does not work.
So I got a question I want to ask you before we get into the extra section of the show. I was just thinking to myself, so if I had a natural gas generator, that would theoretically, I mean, you'd want it piped in ahead of time so that you're not like cutting gas lines. But you could even figure that out if you just had it in the shed, if you had a shut-off valve in the system. But you could theoretically pipe in a natural gas generator onto your property and be pretty well. I mean, that's probably almost the most self-sufficient way to do it, next to having like a giant solar array.
And just pay for gas.
Well, yeah, just pay for gas. If the shit goes down, I'm of the opinion the gas is just going to keep going. I think the gas. I don't know.
Of course,
shut the fucking gas off. I really
don't.
They can shut your power off. I don't think they can physically shut my gas off.
Well, that's one good point. The fact that we can be, when we talk about independence and sovereignty. I remember. I want to remind people that it's 1 week and a half ago, the Russian army bombed the natural gas storage facility not far from Lvov with an Oreshnik, and the pressure in the structure of gas dropped 50%. 50%. So Darren is right. If they don't shut the gas, you're independent, and you don't need a lot of infrastructure. I miss a lot of electricity here. In 2020, I put a gas cooktop. I have a reservoir, and I said I will have a gas generator. Home Depot, they sell gas generator, 15 kilowatt, for example, 22 kilowatts, and you have a automatic transfer switch. When you lose the electricity, you don't even see nothing, because your gas generator detects the outage. It starts. It takes. You have maybe a delay of 30 seconds, and then after that, you're full upload with your house. So a gas generator, since 2004, with the shale gas boom in the United States, they start to develop those gas turbine generator, which was extraordinary. It's a turbine. It's an airplane motor, and they are not expensive. They're reliable. And the frequency is stable, 60 hertz per 60 hertz, and they're very stable, because we have a lot of electronics. You need a frequency that is stable with your microphone or your computer. If you don't have, that's why. So gas is the future.
Theoretically, you could run your furnace back into the generator too and keep your heat on.
Yes. We have the knowledge in Canada.
And talk to him about this, because I might. Well, Marty up north that used to, because he's like an engineer in that space. So
I know him, and he was specialized in closing wells in Quebec, gas, or not only gas. I'm not sure oil, but drilling well that he was closing. He did. I think he did one podcast one time with this. Yes.
Yeah, I bet you.
That's a good topic.
André Meloche, this has been fantastic. Where can people find the podcast and the writing and all that sort of stuff? Are you on Substack or anything like that? Can you give us all the URLs?
Yes. I have I have a website on WordPress, and I transfer something on Substack. We have a podcast with Tim Knight and Payment Iscari, Cerberus at the Gate. It's available on Rumble, on X, and on Substack. Recently, Payment is able to restream on Substack and on X. I have a podcast too. Like I said, I'm not a podcaster. I do some interview with some people, not frequently, but the philosophy of information on YouTube, and that's about it. My texts are available. Most of them are available in French on WordPress, and some of them are in English.
Excellent. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show, and let's keep in touch and do this again.
That was a pleasure. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, that's been fun. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Okay.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
And that's the end of the free version of the show, Grimerica Out Loud. We hope you guys enjoyed it. We get into a bunch of great stuff in the second half. Of course, if you guys want to check that out, head over to GrimericaOutlaw.ca today. Sign up. Not only can you support us and keep us in business, this is all we can do, because you get canceled nowadays for talking about the stuff we talk about. So if I go and try and get a real job, they're gonna look at me like I'm crazy Nazi. So
yeah, we're pigeonholing ourselves.
We're unhireable. So check out GrimericaOutlaw.ca. $6 a month. Sign up today. Not only does it support us and keep us on the air, it also gets you an extension to this show. You get an extra 45 minutes or a half hour, however long this was. You get just as much. You get twice as much show for your buck. So sign up over there and do that. And that's how you support us. That's the best way to keep us in business. And you get all that extra content and the whole extra show. We do a whole extra show a week for us supporters, doing a roundup. So check that out. And of course, Grimerica.ca for our other podcast. Over 700 episodes over there. Contact at thecabin.com for trips and events. Adultbrain.ca for audiobooks and ebooks and print books and publishing books. Any of that stuff, all the above, and GrimericaCBD.com for all the other good stuff.
And A-List.
Oh, that's right. And A-List.ca for Canadian content, and Grimerica.ca/rooms if that's what floats your boat. Of course, you can email us, Graham@Grimerica.com as well. But main thing is to sign up for Plus and support us. So GrimericaOutlaw.ca, sign up today. Other than that, we love you guys. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.
Imaginary lines, twisted and tangled with a handshake with a signature and some policy papers behind enemy lines. Tension builds, a cell phone rings, a bomb drops in a city street sea of iPod noise. Don't get comfortable, free thinkers. Don't get comfortable, free thinkers. If the digital revolution still got a pulse, we need to revive it and make it a reality. I've hacked into a politician's password and transferred money into several overseas accounts. And as we speak, a supercomputer project is in the works. And if it works, we'll use it to point and click our way to some sort of truth. Either you're in or out, are you game, or is the game over? This must be a glitch in the Matrix. This must be a glitch in the Matrix. A revolutionary dream. It's me versus the machines. Go! Watch out for them laser beams. Climb to the top of the pyramid scheme. Capitol Hill's getting steeper and steeper. Meanwhile, the deck gets deeper and deeper. Don't get comfortable, free thinkers. Cause it's gonna take more than hand-and-eye coordination on your PlayStation. It's gonna take mind elevation. There must be a glitch in the Matrix. There must be a glitch in the Matrix. A revolutionary dream. It's me versus the machines. Go! Breaking from my routine, I dive into my computer screen. Swimming in a sea of zeros and ones. Trying to put together 2 and 2, but I keep getting lost. Trying to weed through all the lies from the bad guys in the suits and the neckties. Help me find the oracle. She has the answer. There must be a glitch in the Matrix. There must be a glitch in the Matrix. A revolutionary dream. Rage against the machine. Don't get comfortable, free thinkers. Rage against